This is just a sample of the audiobook. To get the complete audiobook, access the link posted in the first comment.
The Histories by Polybius covers the major events that led to Rome becoming the dominant power in the Mediterranean and beyond. Overcoming setbacks, the Roman army subjugated and then destroyed the Carthaginian Empire in three major phases. The First Punic War, 264 to 241 BC, the Second Punic War, 218 to 201 BC, and the Third Punic War, 149 to 146 BC. Then it faced and overcame the established Greek city-states, culminating in the capture and destruction of Corinth, 146 BC. The story of the rise of the Roman Empire, which lasted nearly a century, and the principal protagonists, including Hannibal and Scipio, is told by the Greek-born historian Polybius, circa 200 to circa 118 BC, who witnessed Rome's culminating victory. Our knowledge of this period is largely dependent on his account, the Histories, which, though it has survived for centuries only in partial form, remains a vivid picture of history being formed. The Life of Polybius by H. J. Edwards. Polybius was born about 208 BC at Megalopolis in Arcadia. His father, Lycortas, who spent the greater part of his life, more especially the years 181 to 168 BC, in the service of the Achaean League, was a friend and supporter of Philopoemen. He went as ambassador to Rome in 189 to Ptolemy Epiphanes, king of Egypt, in 186, and again in 181. And he was strategist of the League in 184. In his youth, Polybius began to take part in public affairs. He seems to have served with the Romans in the campaign of 189 against the Gauls in Asia Minor. He carried the urn of Philopoemen to burial in 183. He was associated with his father Lycortas in the embassy to Egypt in 181, and he was Hipparchus of the Achaean League for the year 169 to 8 BC. Throughout the period, 181 to 168 BC, of political association with his father, Polybius consistently maintained the view that the supremacy of Rome in Greece must be accepted, and that the Greek states must conduct their affairs, whether singly or collectively, and preserve their freedom, without giving any offence or cause of complaint to the Roman Republic. But there was much intriguing in Greece and at Rome against this policy of legal independence, and the suspicions of the Romans were so far aroused that they came to regard the independents with no less displeasure than the avowed enemies of the Republic. Thus, though Achaean League maintained correctly enough this policy of a strict legality during the Third War between Rome and Macedon, 172 to 168 BC, its leaders were quickly brought to account after the defeat of King Perseus at Pydna, 168 BC, and around 1,000 Achaeans were transported to Italy to be tried for their alleged opposition to the sovereignty of Rome. Of this company was Polybius. We hear nothing more of his father Lycortas. He may have died about this time. Quartered in Italian cities, these Greeks waited for the trial which never came, and at last, in 151 BC, when after 16 years' liberty was given them to return home, there were less than 300 of the 1,000 left to go back. Polybius was more fortunate than the rest. He had become acquainted with Aemilius Paulus and his 2 sons during the campaign against Perseus, and afterwards in Macedonia, and now, in 167, he was allowed to remain in Rome in the house of Aemilius to act as tutor to the 2 boys. This was the beginning of that famous friendship between Polybius and the younger son, who became, by adoption, Publius Scipio Aemilianus. Panaetius, the Stoic philosopher, was also an inmate of Aemilius Paulus's house about this time, exercising, perhaps in rivalry with Polybius, a tutorial influence upon the sons. Polybius had access, through Aemilius Paulus, to the best of Roman society during those 16 years of expatriation in Italy, and he made good use of his opportunities. He studied the history and institutions of Rome, doubtless with a view to the history that he meant to write himself. He observed Roman life and character, in the individual and in the state. He hunted the boar with the younger sportsmen.